Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire and the second and last part of our special two-interview series asking the critical question, what is life like for ordinary Meitei and Kuki people in Manipur, and what steps would they like to see taken to restore normalcy? Last Saturday, we presented a Kuki perspective. Today, we offer a view from inside the Meitei community. My guest is a professor at the Indira Gandhi National Tribal University in Imphal, Homen Thangjam. Professor Thangjam, you're speaking to me from Imphal, the capital of Manipur, an area dominated by the Meitei people. Could you start by telling me what are conditions like in Imphal and the surrounding valley?
At the moment at Imphal, there are insipid kinds of disturbances. Like today, the curfew is from, 5 o'clock, extended its, free time is up to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Then life becomes to a kind of standstill. There is a story about Imphal. At the periphery, frequently there are news of skirmishes, shooting, and a firing. So this is how life is at Imphal at the moment, or in the valley areas.
So curfew is something you live through every day?
Yes. During this time, curfew has become, the abnormal has become a part of the normal. The curfew is very much a part of our life today.
Are there any Kuki people around, or has complete segregation, both demographic and geographical, already happened?
From the latter part of the question, the geographical, disconnect is something, we use the term geographical separation only when there is a natural barrier, like a river, like a ravine, or like any form of barriers like a hillock or a mountain. I don't think geographical separation has taken place unless it carries a deeper political connotation. Demographically, there are pockets in Imphal where there are still Kuki people living because it's a kind of cosmopolitan colony. They are the Kukis, they are the Nagas, they are the Muslims, they are the Meiteis. So in 4 or 5 places, still there are the Kuki population, and it is their neighbors who provide them the security, and also the state and central forces looking after them.
This will be news to many people hearing you that there are cosmopolitan colonies in Imphal where there are a few Kuki people still remaining, protected by their neighbors, but they're living amongst Nagas, Meitei, Pangals. How large would this number be?
Sizable amount, but we can't say like the total population will be over 1,000. No, that will be a huge number. But, in a small town like Imphal, that would be a, sizable number.
Let's give the audience some sense of what it's like at the moment for ordinary Meitei people. What are the conditions? What is their life like? First of all, how frequently do you witness firing or killings? How frequently do you hear guns or explosions?
Since the beginning of the unfortunate event It has been happening on a daily basis, especially at the foothills, where there are, it's the area between the, the hill area and the valley area, the periphery of the valley areas. There has been recurring kind of skirmishes.
So every single day in what you call the foothills, there are gunfires, there are explosions, there are even violence and killings every single day.
Yeah, for example, yesterday in between Imphal West District and the Kangpokpi District, there were incidents of firing, shooting. And similarly, or parallelly, in the adjoining areas between Kangpokpi and Imphal there has been skirmishes. And in the areas between Chushanpur and Bishnupur district, there has been. Most rampantly, it happens between the areas which is very adjacent to the Chushanpur district.
So people must be very scared to venture into these areas. People would probably avoid going to the foothills completely for fear that something could happen to them.
We get a different picture. The farmers are not able to undertake farming. Now is the time for paddy, soy. The time for the paddy season has arrived. And there are instances where the farmers cannot go down to the areas, which is adjacent to the hill areas. So that is very much unfortunate. And obviously, yes, people are afraid to venture out in these areas. But during times like this, there has been volunteers, skipping from one place and they reach in that area. So they believe that they are going there to provide security and defense.
Let's talk about what sort of living conditions exist for people in the valley. Do you have constant water and electricity?
Yes. Constant water and electricity we get.
Sorry, I interrupted. Please carry on.
Water has been a problem for some time. In the midsummer, there was scarcity of water, and the authorities have been kind enough to deliver water. And now we hear that there are pipelines where big pipelines had been installed so that there will be regular supply of water in the valley areas. Water and electricity is not a problem.
What about essential items like meat, vegetables, and cooking gas? Are they easily available or are they in short supply? And what about the prices? Are they rocketing?
In May, prices of commodities was double the price of the original items. Now it has come down to around quarter, but it's a huge money for the poor people. Commodities on and off, for example, poultry products, there are times when we get it, there are times when we don't get it. And it is understandable because when one of the most important highway has been blocked and intermittently opened, the movement of the goods are being affected.
What happens when people fall ill or need doctors? I know for the Kuki in the hills, medical attention has become a serious problem because doctors don't necessarily visit the hills any longer. Hospitals have lost staff. What is the situation like for the Meitei people in the Imphal Valley?
See, for the Imphal area, because this is the center of Manipur. So the infrastructure, health, education, medical is good, quite good. But in the periphery of the valley areas, people do have problem assessing, health centers. That has been a structural problem. But at the moment as such, there are no problem getting access to, health services, at least in the Imphal Valley area.
And what about government offices? A no work, no pay policy has recently been brought into place. Does that mean that people are largely back at work and that the government is functioning reasonably efficiently? Or would that not be the case?
I believe the governments have started to function, the offices, to function to a certain level, but not so efficiently, because we can understand that there has been human movement. but in their respective districts, they are supposed to attend the offices. I believe that is the understanding. And in the Imphal Secretariat and the other important offices, communities, irrespective of whether they belong to the Meitei, Kuki, or any other community, the big officers are regularly attending the offices.
This is interesting. Are you saying that Kuki have returned to the valley because of the no work, no way policy and are working now in the secretariat? Because newspaper reports in Delhi suggest that the Kukis have been reluctant to come back and go to work, and that the government is considering permitting them to work in the hills. What is the truth?
I was referring to the high officials, like the IAS officers, like the IPS officers, who have adequate, security, where their quarters are, manned properly. These are the people I was referring to when I was talking about the Imphal Secretariat. Yes, you are right when you said that the ordinary cookies, at the moment, they cannot be in Imphal. I mean, many of them, that is the apprehension they have.
What is the impact of all of this on children? Are schools functioning? Are children able to go to schools on their own? Are their parents willing to let them go and take the risk? And what about when children finish school? Are there parks when they can safely play?
Today, I had to sign a consent paper from the school for my son. So I was in 2 minds whether I sign the consent paper allowing him to attend the classes, or do I still keep him at home? Education sector has been greatly affected. For example, in my case, since the situation degraded, we have not been able to attend our campus, for more than 2 months. Education, schools, classes are badly affected. But in between, some other universities like the Manipur University, Dhannamanjuri University, and the other universities are making arrangements and they are taking examinations, but which is not the case in my case.
Can I ask, Professor Thangjam, what decision did you take about your young son? Have you given him permission to go to school, or would you be reluctant to do that?
See, now, unannounced, there can be agitations in the Imphal areas. There can be disruptions. There can be, protests, rallies. So these are in the heart of Imphal, these are the kind of disruptions affecting the school classes. And also adding to it is the dimension that some miscreants might target schools, colleges, etc. So I asked my wife to take my son and see the situation. And if things, during times like this, indeed, we are also afraid. At the same time, we are also concerned about the career, because already COVID has taken away, precious years away from our children. So we believe normalcy should return, at least for the sake of the small children who doesn't know anything about what is happening.
But it means that the lives of young children have been very badly affected. Their schooling is suffering, but also I imagine opportunity to play in the open in parks with their friends is also limited, if not denied. This age group of children is feeling the impact terribly.
In some families, in addition to that, television connections have been, removed. For example, in my home, I don't entertain cable television anymore. Children should not be exposed to violence, and it becomes my responsibility to see that they are safe and they are not exposed to all this, whatever is happening.
Now, earlier this month, the well-known Meitei singer Jayanta Lukrakpam, better known by his stage name Tapta, released a song with the following lyrics. I'm quoting, "We will never have peace until every Kuki is killed. Once the army releases their grip, the Kukis shall be eliminated. Even if peace returns, Meiteis will not stop this war. First, tell me, how did this song go down with ordinary Meitei people?
It's difficult to assess at the moment, except for very few people. People do not have access to internet. For example, today, I'm using my friend's office because he's a judge. They have the privilege of these connections. All right. So I cannot say like how it had went down with the ordinary Meiteis or the Manipuris. But I was reminded about a saying, Breck once said, "Can there be singing during the dark times?" And he replied, and he said, yes, there can be singing about the dark times. In this context, I want to say one or two things. How conflict have affected our life. I'm not talking about this present time. Manipur has been going through episodes of conflict. The removal of the Armed Forces Special Power Act from Manipur, and many others. So when a society becomes militarized by the Indian state or also by the community themselves, even the language changes. For example, if we go back in time, there was once one chief minister of Manipur, and he said, because at that time, a pregnant woman was killed. Ravina was her name. She was a pregnant lady, and she died in front of her infant son in the Kwaramban Bazaar or Imakitul. And simultaneously that happened because there was a extrajudicial killing. So when this was taken up in the assembly floor in Manipur, the Honorable Chief Minister announced there is no other option than killing. Then for the ordinary people, our language has become so militarized. In the street, when two people have a disagreement over taking over or parting the ways, giving pathways, it begins like this: Hatura, meaning, should I kill you? Thomjalura, shall I strike you? Fujalura, to beat you up. So the way conflict have changed, even our vocabulary, I believe it has gone down to many of the people. But I cannot say to the creator of this particular, art form, music. But honestly, for me, it's a matter of concern.
I hear what you're saying, that over the decades and what you call the militarization of Manipur, the language that people use to each other
Even have undergone change.
involves threats of killing them, beating them up. And that seems to become the new normal in Manipur.
Yes. This is the impact of conflict.
So this language, where the song says, we will never have peace until every Kuki is killed. Once the army releases their grip, Kukis shall be eliminated. That may be shocking language to people outside Manipur, but you're saying that over the years, over the decades, people have begun to speak like this. This is the new normal.
Yeah, partly so. And this gentleman, he came out with an interview. He wrote, I was in the front line. I saw the column of houses burning down. People were dying in front of my eyes. I absorbed the pain and I wrote it. So, I don't know what to say. I'm not an art critic, but I can understand that this is not the appropriate time for such languages. And outsiders cannot understand it. And some people might be laughing also, hearing this song, because there is something called root metaphor. When you use certain words, when you crack a joke, when you say something funny, the community people will understand it, but others might not understand it. But we cannot go down to the level and trivialize it. All I'm trying to say it is his license to create or musical work, but still I say it is a concerning matter.
You were personally anguished, upset by this song.
Yes, also by the ordinariness of the vocabulary we have taken up in the midst of the series of conflicts that had bombarded us.
Professor Thangjam, yesterday, a very disturbing video went viral right across the country. It shows 2 or 3 Kuki women stripped naked, being molested and groped by what is allegedly a mob of 800 or 1,000 Meitei men. And apparently, although you don't see it, they were then gang raped in a field. This video was shot in the Thoubal district of the valley, and it happened around the 4th of May. It is the subject of front page stories in every newspaper today. It's on several television channels. I sent it to you before we began our interview. I imagine you would have seen this 25-second video. What did you think? How did you feel when you viewed that?
Indefensible. Certain acts cannot be justified even in the name of war and violence. Indefensible. But I believe the Meiteis have a sense of justice. There was once one beautiful girl from UP. She was a Marwari. We were very young. She was raped. She was killed by some children of very powerful political families. The Meitei society made sure that these culprits were punished, even if the state authority could not. Series of incidences were there when Meiteis as a community stood up. And I strongly believe that whoever was involved in this heinous crime will be punished by the Meiteis. I strongly believe in that, and I strongly condemn it. If the incident has been proven to be true, we condemn it. We cannot tolerate this.
Newspaper reports, practically in every paper, quote, Manipuri policemen saying it is true, they filed an FIR, they will be taking action, but as yet, even though the video is 2 months old and the people's faces are clearly visible, no one has been arrested. But let me ask you this. You used very strong language. You said it's indefensible. I strongly condemn it. Would that be the feeling of most Meitei people as well?
You mean the perpetrator or those
No.
people like me?
I mean, innocent Meitei people watching this video, if they see it, will they feel like you that this is indefensible? I totally condemn it.
Last evening, when we heard about this video going viral, there was a collective silence, if I have to use the word. So ashamed that we believe we cannot lift up our heads in front of any other people. That is the angst people feel. And I believe, even if the police, if they cannot take up any kind of stringent actions, I believe there will be someone to punish them.
Let me ask you this. How do you view the Arambai Tengol and the Meitei Lipon? Do you see them as cultural organizations working for the welfare of the Meitei people, or do you think they are militants who often target and terrorize tribals? Which of the two views? Or is it a bit of both?
You know, when the media started using the metaphor of the Arambai Tengol, wearing black shirts, boys in black shirt, you know, I not only me, many of us, you know, we're having the impression that what is happening. All right, you want to know about the Arambai Tengol and the Meitei Lipul? Yes, these are cultural organizations. Meitei Lipul literally means unity of the Meitei. All right. Arambai Tengol, on the other hand, it's a kind of, allusion to a weapon of, to a very dreadful weapon used by the Meiteis during the days of the kings. Arambai is literally a dart. You are on the horseback, you use it, you sour it, like darts from the quiver, you take it out, throw it, sour it. And we have a saying that the Awaz, we call the Burmese the Awaz. When the Awaz hear that, when they heard that there are the Meitei, the militia attacking them, they gaze at the sky, they look up to the sky. And literally meaning they are afraid of the Arambai servers. So that is the meaning, literal. Tangol means a troop. Meitei Lipul, I talked to few of their leaders and many of the members because I wanted to understand them and even the portrayal of them in the media and in many other, spheres of discussion. What I got to know about them is these are the people who believe in an egalitarian society. There is an institution called Singlup. Sing means firewood, Lup means organization. All right. It's a traditional organization performing the last rites and the rituals of the dead. All right. And this institution started against the tyranny of the rulers. Monthly, on an annual basis, you have to deliver the taxes. So who will look after the, the sick, the poor? So the organization emerged as a kind of responding to the situation and giving a life. British anthropologists wrote about it and said that although the Meiteis are very, very poor, no one died of poverty because of the existence of this Singlup. So Meitei Lipul, they go back to time because this institution, as a remnant of the past, is still surviving in my locality, in many of the Meitei localities. And in fact, this is the only one that takes the responsibility of cremation and many other death-related rituals, apart from the, religious rituals, etc. So they want an egalitarian kind of society where someone has to take care of the, the poor and the helpless and the sick, etc. And also, the Meiteis are a divided lot. They are the Meitei Hindus. They are the Meiteis who believe in the traditional faith. They are the Meitei Pangals. There are the Vishnupriya Meiteis or the Manipuris. They are the Meitei Christians. So these people, they wanted to unify this irrespective of whatever faith or religion, they ascribe to. That was one that they attempted. And secondly, they also go back to the origin myth of the Meiteis and the Marams and the Tangkhuls, etc. So many of the lost relation that has been because of the civilizational changes, they go back to the Maram people and many other hill communities, and they try to build up the relationship. And coming down to the recent times, when the call for the war against the drugs was started, the Meitei Lipul, they invited 33 presidents of, apex bodies from the hill communities, and together they took the pledge to stop cultivation. But during times like this, Meitei Lipul has been somehow pulled in. I don't know how much are they, how much they have become militant, etc. And coming down to the Arambai Tangol, these are youths, educated, who believe that because of drugs and because of modernity, the Meiteis have become less and less patriotic. They are crazy about, the modern amenities like motorcycles, cars, beautiful clothes. So these educated youths thought that why cannot we have an organization? And because in the Meitei society, the youths do not have a place during the times of decision making or during discussion hours. So they said, like, we can also contribute. So what they did was they went to, many of the, abandoned Meitei religious sites. They cleaned the areas, planted, took care of the sacred groves, etc. And they also tried to build a relationship with other communities.
Okay.
But they had a very short time. By the time they came up on the scene, the conflict has started, and somehow they have been pulled. Now, the kind of mass, what you call, the identification of the youth nowadays, in the national media, it was accused that it was represented that they're all Arambai, militants, wielding arms, etc. A youth's identification, when asked by someone, and during the time when he's having a gun in his hands, will not obviously say like, my name is Homen. They will identify to someone whom they look up to. So everyone became Arambai overnight, to the extent that the original Arambai had to disband, came out in the public media. So the understanding the nuances, the creation of the enemy, I believe, the United States of America had looked for an enemy for a very long time. Yes, the connections. All right, that is my, understanding about these two organizations. I'm not defending them.
No, but if I understood your answer correctly, and I'm only very briefly pointing this out for the audience, you believe that at the initiation and start, both Meitei Lipon and Arambai Tengol were cultural, dedicated to the welfare of the Meitei people and the preservation of their culture. But the Arambo may well have been misused, and people may have pretended to be part of them when they're not, which is why you say the Arambai Tengol disbanded. I believe that has happened in May. And the Meitei Lipon might have veered and gone into militancy. Because one of the things I notice is that on the 28th of April, 5 days before the troubles began, Pramit Singh, their chief, put up on his Facebook a sentence which said, "Let us annihilate our neighbors in the hills." So it's possible that the Meitei Lipon may have gone off track and gone into militancy. The Arambai Tengol, you're saying, were perhaps wrongly interpreted. Many people pretended to be part of them, giving them a bad name, which is why they disbanded. Have I summed that up correctly?
I believe so.
Let me then put a very different opposite question to you, because it's only fair I should put opposite questions as well. Last Saturday, the 15th, the Meitei Christian Churches Council issued a statement claiming that 1.5 lakh Meitei Christians in Manipur, and now I'm quoting, have been under attack by Kuki Christians, and hundreds of Meitei Christians have been forced to take shelter in relief camps. Separately, I've been told by Meitei students that Kukis are deliberately destroying Meitei churches in the valley to give Meitei Hindus a bad name. The Kukis strenuously, vigorously, repeatedly deny this. As an independent person speaking to me from Imphal, do you know whether these allegations are true or false?
On the part of the Meitei Christians, very true. Majority of them has been flushed out from Churchandpur. All the Meiteis, whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Meitei Hindu or a Meitei animist, all of them has been flushed out. And coming down to the second part of the question, if the Kukis have intentionally burned down Meitei Christian churches, I spoke to the spokespersons of the Meitei Christians and asked them whether this is true or not. They admitted around 4 churches were unfortunately burned down by the Kuki militants. It happened in Napet. Other than that, the circulation of the rumors, the circulation of the hype, and precisely I believe that is why internet has been shut down in Manipur.
But again, you're saying that some of these allegations are true. Some Meitei churches have been destroyed in the valley by Kuki militants. However, it may have been exaggerated and the numbers may be more than the truth.
Yes.
The core is true. That's what you're saying.
Yes. Perhaps The inferno might have spread out from one house to another. I cannot say because I did not witness it. But it has been confirmed that around 4 Meitei Christian churches have been burned down.
Let me put to you what to many people feels like a paradox. On the one hand, the Meitei are renowned for their graceful dance, their lilting music, their evocative theater. On the other hand, we see arson, we see looting, we see killing, we've even seen a dreadful beheading of David Thike. To most people, this looks like a terrible contradiction. How do you view it?
I believe this is a very interesting question. The Meiteis are a martial race. For centuries, they have been fighting. And still today, they believe that they belong to the warrior class, warrior race, and still they are warriors. All right. And also, they believe that the whole civilizational responsibility of defending the once Asiatic power called Manipur before British colonialism, it is their responsibility. And I think it's a romantic feeling. All right. But coming down to your question, the detribalization that the Meiteis have undergone was because of something called the written script, a form of education which was practiced by the people called Wari Liba. Means people move from locality to locality, gather the students, and teach them in the form of storytelling. Detribalization also encompassed taming of the horses, the cattle, etc., etc. We have seen it. And finally, one of the most vital elements was the adoption of or the imposition of Hinduism in two particular historical epochs. One during the times of Garavani was in the 18th century. For the first time, he adopted Vaishnavism. All right, which he believed was the religion of the warrior to consolidate the lost territory of Manipur and also to force a better relationship with the hill communities. And second time was during the times of Bhagya Chandra. But what was interesting is there was resistance against this forced conversion during the times of Bhagya Chandra, during the times of, it was all geopolitical. When Garavani was adopted or embraced Hinduism, it was for geopolitics to expand his territory with the help of many other, Hindu brothers or kingdoms. The same applied to Bhagya Chandra because this was the times of devastation at the hands of the Burmese. What I'm trying to say here is when they did try that, there was resistance from the traditional faith. And one of the interesting observations made by many of the anthropologists, British anthropologists, was that the similarity that the Meiteis have with the Burmans was that they had to develop social polity and an arrangement of divinities, the idea of God, and which became the basis of the society. Hinduism came, gave the police, signed it. But what I'm trying to say here is, these two rulers, when they tried to impose, Hinduism to the larger populace, they did not try to impose two kernels of Hinduism. One is the social order, which we call the caste system, in which the Brahman has to be at the apex. They did not do that. The king remained at the apex of the social polity. The second one is the three pillars of Hinduism: karma, samsara, and also about moksha, because people already had an understanding about their afterlife, about the good and the evils. So it was a syncretized form, and at the same time, some parts of the traditional elements were written, the martial, elements were written. And when you talk about dance forms and the theaters, we strongly believe that it was a transformation of those warrior steps and the designs made into performing arts. All right, but somewhere in the corner, that, brutal, that barbaric, element was never abandoned. It was not a complete transformation. So during times like this, somehow, when we believe Buddhism preaches peace, Conflicts were there in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka. Christians preaches the message of love. Ukrainians, Russians are fighting. And I believe these are the contradictions you rightly pointed out.
And you're saying, again, very briefly, will I sum it up for the audience, that Manipur's complex history explains the contradictions I mentioned. Is that right?
I agree with you.
Let's then come briefly to the second big issue I want to discuss, which is what are the steps that ordinary Meitei people feel are necessary so that their lives can return to some semblance of normalcy. The Kuki say normalcy cannot happen if Biren Singh is not replaced and president's rule imposed. This is because they say they've lost faith in him. Even his own 7 Kuki BJP MLAs have said so publicly. They think Biren Singh is anti-Kuki. What do you personally think? Should he be allowed to continue, which is what the central government in Delhi seems to be keen on, or should he be removed because he's an obstacle in the eyes of the Kukis?
Again, Manipur is an interesting area of research, brings out many contradictions. When there was the Congress regime headed by the Ibobi government, our Naga brothers said it is a communal government. We can never stay under his regime anymore. Coming down to the present context, Biren, the Kuki's brothers and sisters accused that he is anti-Kuki, all right, and that he should be removed. But there is also a larger voice, who feels that the gap between the hills and the valley in Manipur, because of the coming of the Biren government, were bridged. Before that, you might have also heard 6 months of economic blockade, 3 months of economic blockade. Everywhere there was protest. Things were never normal in Manipur. All right. So it is very difficult to judge and say like what is right and wrong, because it is the perception people have. All right.
What is your personal view?
There is a saying in political science, I'm a teacher of politics, you cannot change a horse in the middle of a stream.
I think that answer is crystal clear. You cannot change a horse in the
middle of a stream.
Okay, I think that's crystal clear.
Yeah.
How do you view the functioning of the army and the paramilitary? There are said to be an additional 36,000 soldiers in Manipur. Do you believe they're acting impartially and fairly?
We cannot accuse a very, sacred institution of India, all right, just like that. But the popular perception and the relationship of the Assam rifles with the Manipuris has been, from a very long time, since the times of the British colonialism. It has had a history of strength relationship. All right. But to say that these central forces are biased might be saying too much. But when the common people see, the central forces are also, I believe, caught in the middle. No? They don't really know who the Meiteis are. They don't clearly know where is the demarcation and the boundary. They don't really know who is a Kuki, who is a Naga. Most of them are newcomers, to be honest, and to be with them. But when a house is being burned down in front of their nose, if they don't intervene, might be the Meiteis or the Kukis, but have developed the perception that they are biased. When Meitei houses are burned down in their presence, Meiteis obviously develop the perception that they are biased. They are not doing anything. And the Kukis, at the same time, when their houses are burned down by the so-called Meiteis, all right, and in the presence of these armed forces, all right, they also have developed the perception that they are biased. And I think there is no clarity of orders. So this much I can say.
It's widely believed in the rest of India that the Meitei people look upon the Assam Rifles with a measure of distrust. They think the Assam Rifles are biased against them. Is that a correct perception?
No, perception can never be correct in the hermeneutic sense. Perceptions are perceptions. It's one side of the truth.
Let me put it like this. Is that a widely
Right.
held perception?
When Amit Shah ji came to Manipur, I think one of the first demand was to remove the Sioux arrangement. And some also demanded if the Sioux the Sioux pact cannot be abrogated, the Assam rifles should be replaced. I believe there lies the message.
Okay. Now the Kukis are demanding separate administration, and on Friday, the Kuki Impi, which is the apex body of the Kuki tribes, clarified in a special press communique that by separate administration, they mean separate statehood. They're not talking about union territory status. They're not talking about autonomous territorial councils. They want a separate state for the Kukis. How do you view that demand?
India is a democratic country. It's a parliamentary democracy. Everyone has the right to demand something from the government. And that is the Westminster model of government we have. Every community has the right to demand.
Should it be granted?
That is something that the government has to decide. And the giving or taking or keeping, there has to be the basis of truth. The practicity needs, I believe, an altogether investigation, which I believe should be done in the most unbiased way.
Let me put it like this. If the Kukis, there's a big if there, if the Kukis were to be granted a separate state, Manipur would be fractured. Chances are the Nagas would then want to merge with Nagaland, which is an old demand of theirs. How do Meitei people, ordinary Meitei people, view the prospect or the possibility that Manipur could end up fractured?
This is something which affects them a lot. The romantic people. Morning you get up, the first horizon you see is the mountain range or the hill ranges, which has become very much a part of your daily life. And the feeling that, we are together. The poetic, people. I don't want to use the word the poetic fools or the romantic fools, because people can interpret me in different ways. All right? The possibility of the fragmentation, the balkanization of Manipur. All right? It's all in the hands of the government or the Indian state.
But this is something the Meitei definitely would not want.
It would be another wounded civilizational, moment for them.
So this is something they will resist, hopefully peacefully, as strongly as they can.
Yes, I agree.
Let me ask you a question from the Meitei point of view. The Meiteis are, no doubt, understandably upset about what is loosely called the land imbalance in Manipur. They are 53% of the population, but restricted to 10% of the land, which is the valley. The tribals are roughly 40% of the population, but have access to 90% of the land, which is the hills, but they also have access to the valley as well. To correct this imbalance, the Meitei want scheduled tribe status. In your eyes, is that justified?
I don't think the demand for the inclusion of the settled tribe is, to make them, to give them room in the hill areas. I think this is a gross misinterpretation. There could be some other factors like, for example, in the valley areas, if you follow the Manipur Land Revenue and the Reforms Act, dating back to 1960, which was recently amended, if a tribal, all right, for example, okay, if you sell a piece of land to a tribal, there's no problem. I'm talking about the valley areas where there are the patta systems. But once in the ownership of the tribal, if she or he wants to sell away the land, then there are lots of other, bottlenecks. The DC has to be, taken into account, and there's so many other procedures. But that is just one aspect. So, but the demand for ST, I believe, as far as I understand from the Scheduled Tribe Demand Committee, is to somehow give a kind of constitutional provision to the valley areas, because the railway lines had been opened up, and because of neoliberalism, different projects, the trans highways are opening up, trans railways, soon to be completed. In addition to that, so many changes. In the midst of so many changes, how do you protect the paddy fields? How do you protect the wetlands, and also the forest land, etc.? And beyond that, I don't think, because the Meiteis, their romantic relationship with the hills of Manipur, ask any Meitei, they will never go back to the hills. They will never climb up the hill there and make a permanent home there. In very rare cases.
So you believe personally, speaking for yourself, that the demand for scheduled tribe status is justified and warranted?
See, on this issue, the Meiteis are a divided lot. All right. To the extent that in 2013, the Scheduled Tribe Demand Committee, they filed a complaint to the government of India, to the concerned ministry. I believe the Ministry of Tribal Welfare and Social Justice. I don't know the exact department, to the government of India. And the department had instructed the government of Manipur in 2013, to comply, to two needful things. To become an ST, to be included in the list of ST, one is the socioeconomic, the profile has to be studied. Second one is the ethnographic study of the Meiteis. This was recommended in 2013. And because of the divisions between the Meiteis on the perspective, on the very idea of inclusion of the ST demand, the government withheld it for a very long time. And finally, the Meitei or the Meitei Tribe Union, which are part of the party which are demanding the inclusion of the Meiteis in the list, approached the High Court of, Manipur High Court. And I believe from there, the problem started. All right. So the High Court came out with the orders that the government of Manipur should complete the recommendations, the two parts, within, May 29. And even before Manipur government had given its recommendation, yes or no, eruption was there.
But you're saying a very important thing. You're saying that the thinking of the Meitei people as a whole on this demand for scheduled tribe status is not uniform and united. There are different opinions. Because
Yes.
one problem that would occur, if all Meitei were to become scheduled tribe, they would lose that part who are OBCs, their status. And certainly those who are scheduled castes would lose their status, because everyone would then be scheduled tribe. You can't be multiple statuses. That, I take it, is one reason why there is division amongst the Meitei people on this issue.
Another reason is, I was talking about the de-tribalization, and also something called the Manipuri civilization. An Asiatic power, an ancient kingdom, who had kings, who had their own laws, their own constitutions, and many other, tentacles of the state apparatus, all right, a civilizational community, who have achieved certain heights in their contribution, founding of a script, dance, arts, etc., sports, all right. Coming down to the level of the tribal status is something many of the Meiteis simply could not accept. So it is not merely from the political economy, perspective. It's not simply the question of gain or lose. It's a matter of that izzat, that saman, the prestige.
I understand. And therefore, for all these multiple reasons, the Meitei people are not united. They do not speak in one voice on the demand for scheduled tribe status. My last question, Professor Thangjam, how do ordinary Meitei people view the fact that for 75 days and more, while there has been a crisis in Manipur, times when Manipur has been burning, there have been killings, there have been beheadings, the Prime Minister is silent. He hasn't said a word. When there was an earthquake in Turkey, he was amongst the first to tweet and express his concern. When sportsmen and actors have their birthdays, he is amongst the first to wish them. But when something far worse is happening in Manipur, he's silent. In his last Man Ki Baat, he spoke about the cyclone in Gujarat, which is nowhere near as traumatic an experience as what you're going through in Manipur, but he has nothing to say. How do ordinary Meitei people, not politicians, not the rich, how do ordinary Meitei people view their prime minister's total silence?
Before I come to that answer, just one thing briefly. By 2000, by the end of August, the central government has given the orders that the illegal immigrants, their biometrics will be completed, not only Manipur, but also Mizoram. So people also perceived that that was something being, ordered by the defense minister or the prime minister. Well, that is the hunch they have. Whatsoever, the Manipuris love Modiji, they want him to speak. And I also believe he should speak. During times like this, the head of the state, head of the government, we want him to speak. And when I say that, I also believe I'm carrying the larger, the voice of the people. Modiji should speak.
And when he refuses to speak, do you feel let down? Do you feel he's turned his back on you?
We also have a belief that silence is a form of politics. Often, our relationship with our parents, even when I grew up, many of the things, when I committed a mistake, I was never beaten up. Many of the Meitei parents are like that. They remain silent. During food, when we have meals, when we have committed certain mistakes, they never speak to us. So Meitei strongly believe that silence is a very powerful form of politics. And it is up to the heads of the state to decide. So the complexities in Manipur, which simply cannot be, exhibited.
Can I point one thing out? When parents are silent because their children have made a mistake, the parents are showing disapproval. Many people think when Modi is silent, he's suggesting he has no problem with what's happening. He's not concerned. He's letting it continue. That's the difference between a father's silence and the prime minister's silence.
The Orient philosophy, contradictions in India is our inability to understand a community fully. What the North Indians feel, they believe the South Indians will understand. What the South Indians feel, they believe the Northeast or anybody else would understand that. The complexity of the Indian polity or the society, I believe, goes much beyond the corridors of caste system, racism, etc. Ours is a highly complex society. We need to understand each other.
At that point, Professor Thangjam, thank you very much for talking to me. And thank you for using your friend the judge's Wi-Fi so that you can speak to us from Imphal. You are the first and so far only person in over 2.5 months we've been able to speak to from Manipur and Imphal. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.